Modern cars have a terrible weight-to-payload ratio. A century ago, the best-selling car in the United States, Ford's Model T, rang a watt from every 12 grams of its internal combustion engine. Now engines in best-selling American cars are getting a watt per gram, a 92% improvement. That is the one bit of happy news I'm going to impart in this chapter. Now for the bad news. The U.S. data show that during the past 100 years, average engine power has increased more than 11-fold to about 170 kilowatts. This means that despite a huge drop of mass power density, today's typical car engine is hardly lighter than it was a century ago, and the average car itself has become much heavier. Its mass has roughly tripled, reaching more than 108,800 kilograms. The average for all light duty vehicles, nearly half of which are pickups, SUVs, and minivans, because nearly three-quarters of U.S. commuters drive alone, you get the worst possible ratio of vehicle to passenger weight. That ratio is what matters, because for all the auto industries talk about lightweighting, using aluminum, magnesium, and even carbon fiber reinforced polymers to reduce total weight. This ratio ultimately limits the energy efficiency. Here in ascending order are a few of the weight ratios that a 70 kilogram passenger can achieve. 0.1 for a 7 kilogram bicycle, 1.6 for Italy's 110 kilogram Vespa scooter, 5 or less for a modern bus, and that's just if you count sitting passengers. 7.3 for France's 510 kilogram Citroën 2CV, deux chevaux, or two horses, back in the 1950s. 7.7 for the Ford Model T, introduced in 1908, and also for Japan's Shinkansen rapid train that began to run in October 1964. The train's frugal ratio owes as much to design as it does to a high ridership rate. 12 for a smart car, 16 for a Mini Cooper, 18 for my own Honda Civic LX, 20 and change for the Toyota Camry, 26 for the average American light duty vehicle in 2013, 28 for the BMW 740i, 32 for the Ford F-150, the best-selling American vehicle, 39 for the Cadillac Escalade EXT. Of course, you can get quite spectacular ratios by pairing the right car with the right driver. I regularly see a woman driving a Hummer H2 that easily weighs 50 times as much as she does. That's like going after a fly with a steam shovel. To put it all in perspective, consider that the latest Boeing, the 787 and 10 does better than a small Citroen. Its maximum takeoff weight is 254 tons, with 330 passengers weighing 23 tons and another 25 tons of cargo. The overall weight to payload ratio comes to just 5.3. Cars got heavy because part of the world got rich and drivers got coddled. Light duty vehicles are larger and they come equipped with more features, including automatic transmissions, air conditioning, entertainment and communication systems, and an increasing number of servo motors powering windows, mirrors and adjustable seats, and new battery heavy hybrid drives and electric cars will not be lighter. The small all-electric Ford Focus weighs 1.7 tons. General Motors Volt is more than 1.7 tons, and the Tesla is just above 2.1 tons. Lighter designs would help, but obviously nothing could help or quarter the ratio as easily as having two or four people in a car, and yet in the United States that is the hardest thing to enforce. The 2019 State of the American Commute reported that nearly three quarters of commuters drive alone to work. Commutes are much less common in Europe. 36% in the UK, and even rarer in urban Japan, just 14%. But average car sizes have been increasing both in the EU and in Japan, and so the outlook is forever better engines or electric motors in heavy vehicles used in a way that results in the worst weight to payload ratios for any mechanized means of personal transportation in history. These cars may be, by some definition, smart, but they are not wise. Why electric cars aren't as great as we think yet? Let me begin with a disclaimer. I am neither promoting electric vehicles, EVs, nor denigrating them. I simply observe that the rational case for accepting them has been undermined by unrealistic market forecasts and a disregard for the environmental effects involved in producing and operating such vehicles. Unrealistic forecasts have been and continue to be the norm. In 2010, Deutsche Bank predicted that EVs would claim 11% of the global market by 2020. In reality, they will be less than 4%, and this triumph of hope our experience continues. Recent forecasts for 2030 have EVs adding up to as much as 20% of the global car fleet, or as little as 2%. Bloomberg New Energy Finance sees 548 million EVs on roads by 2040. XCon only XCon only 162 million. EV in those enthusiasts have also neglected to note the environmental consequences of mass scale conversion to electric drive. If EVs are to reduce carbon emissions and thus minimize the extent of global warming, their batteries must not be charged with electricity generated from the combustion of fossil fuels. But in 2020, just our 60% of global electricity will originate in fossil fuels. About 12% will come from wind and solar, and the rest from hydro energy and nuclear fission. As a global mean, more than fifths of the electricity for an EV still comes from fossil carbon, but that fraction varies wildly among countries and within them. EVs in my home province of Manitoba, Canada, where more than 99% of all electricity comes from large hydro stations, are clean hydro cars. Quebec, Canada, about 97% hydro, and Norway about 95% hydro. Come close to that. French EVs are largely nuclear fission cars. The country gets some 75% of its electricity from fission. But in most of India, particularly Uttar Pradesh, China, particularly Shanxi province, and Poland, EVs are overwhelmingly coal cars. The last thing we need is to push for the rapid introduction of a source of demand that would summon even more fossil fuels based electricity generation. And even if EVs all ran on renewable sources of electricity, greenhouse gases would still be emitted during the production of and steel cement and steel for hydroelectric dams, wind turbines, and photovoltaic panels, and of course during the manufacture of the cars themselves. themselves. See what's worse for the environment, your car or your phone. This page. EV production will have other environmental impacts too. The Arthur D. Little Management Consultancy estimates that based on a vehicle life of 20 years, the manufacture of an EV creates three times as much toxicity as that of a conventional vehicle. This is mostly due to the greater use of heavy metals. Similarly, a detailed comparative life cycle and cycle analysis published in the Journal of Industrial Ecology found the production of EVs to involve substantially higher toxicity both to human beings and to freshwater ecosystems. I am not suggesting that these are arguments against the adoption of EVs. I am merely pointing out that the implications of the new technology must be appraised and understood before we accept any radical claims in its favor. We cannot simply imagine ideal pollution-free machines and then will them into existence. When did the jet age begin? Dating the dawn of the jet age is hard because there were so many different firsts. The first experimental takeoff of a jet-powered airplane was that of a warplane. The German Heinkel he 178 in August 1939. Fortunately, it entered the service too late uh, to affect the outcome of the Second World War. The first flight of the first flight of the first commercial design, the British and the Havilland DH-106 comet was in July 1949, and its first British Overseas Airways Corporation commercial flight was in 1952, but four disasters in October 1952 near Rome, in May 1953 in Calcutta, in January 1954 again near Rome, and in April 1954 near Naples. Grounded the Comet fleet and redesigned airplane made the first transatlantic flight on October 4, 1958. Meanwhile, the Soviet Tupolev 204 entered domestic service in September 1956, but you can make a strong argument that the jet age began on October 26, 1958, when a Pan Am Boeing 707 took off from Idlewild Airport, now JFK International Airport, to Paris on the first of its daily scheduled flights. Several reasons justify that choice. The redesigned Comet was too small and unprofitable to begin a design dynasty, and there were no successor models. Meanwhile, Tupolev's aircraft were used only by the countries of the Soviet bloc. The Boeing 707, however, inaugurated the industry's most successful design family, one that progressed relentlessly by adding another 10 models another 10 models to its varied lineup. The three-engine Boeing 727 was the first follow on in 1963. The four engine 747 introduced in 1969 was perhaps the most revolutionary design in modern aviation, and the latest edition, the 787 Dreamliner series introduced in 2011 in made mostly of carbon fiber composites and is now able to fly on routes longer than 17 hours. The 707 had a military pedigree. The plane started as a prototype of an in-air refueling tanker and further development led to the KC-135A stratotanker, and finally to a four-engine passenger plane powered by small diameter Pratt and Whitney turbojet engines, each with about 50 kilonewtons of thrust. By comparison, each of the two General Electric GE and X1B high bypass turbofan engines powering today's 787 and delivers more than 300 kilonewtons at takeoff. The first scheduled flight of the 707 Clipper America on October 26, 1958 was preceded by a welcoming ceremony speech by Juan Trippe, Pan Am's then president, and a performance by a U.S. Army band. The 111 passengers and 12 crew members had members had to make an unscheduled stop at Gander International Airport in Newfoundland, Canada. But even so, they were able to land at Paris Le Bourget Airport 8 hours and 41 minutes after leaving New York. By December, the plane was flying the New York Miami route, and in January 1959, it began to make the first transcontinental flights from New York to Los Angeles. Before the introduction of the wide bodies, first the Boeing 747 and then the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 and the Lockheed L-1011 in 1970. Boeing 707s were the dominant long-distance jetliners. One of them brought me and my wife from Europe to the United States in 1969. Gradual improvements in the Boeing family resulted in a vastly superior plane. In a standard two-class business and economy configuration, the first Dreamliner could seat about 100 more people than the 720 with a maximum takeoff weight nearly twice as great and a maximum range almost twice as long. Yet the Dreamliner consumes 70% less fuel per passenger kilometer, and because it is built from carbon composites, the 787 can be pressurized to simulate a lower altitude than an aluminium fuselage will allow, resulting in greater comfort for passengers. Eventually, Boeing made just our 1,707s. When Pan Am brought the plane out of retirement for a 25th anniversary commemorative flight in 1983. It flew most of the original crew and passengers to Paris. But that was not the end of 707 service. A number of non-US airlines flew different models until the 1990s, and Iran Saha Airlines did so as late as 2013. Although today the 707 can be found only in junkyards, the plane's place in history remains secure. It represents the first effective and rewarding step in the evolution of commercial jet flights. Why kerosene is king? Eliminating kerosene-based jet fuel will be one of the greatest challenges in creating a world without carbon emissions. Aviation accounts for only about 2% of the global volume of such emissions, and some 12% of the global released by the transportation sector. But converting to electric drive is much harder for airplanes than for cars and trains. Today's jetline fuel, the most common formulation of which is called Jet A1, has a number of advantages. It has a very high energy density, as it packs 42.8 megajoules into each kilogram. That is slightly less than gasoline, but it can stay liquid down to minus 47 degrees Celsius, and it beats gasoline on cost evaporative losses at high altitude and risk of fire during handling. No real rivals yet exist. Batteries capacious enough for intercontinental flights carrying hundreds of people are still the stuff of science fiction, and we will not see wide-bodied planes fueled by liquid hydrogen anytime soon. What we need is a fuel equivalent to kerosene that is derived from plant matter or organic waste. Such a biojet fuel would release no more CO2 during combustion than plants sequester during growth. The proof of principle has been demonstrated since 2007. Test flights using blends of Jet A1 and biojet have proved suitable as drop-in alternatives for modern aircraft. In that time, some 150,000 flights have used blended fuel, but only 5 major airports have regular biofuel distribution. Oslo, Stavanger, Stockholm, Brisbane, and Los Angeles, with other offering occasional supply and biofuel used by America's largest airline. United is an excellent example of the daunting scale of the required substitution. The company's contract with a biofuel supplier will provide only 2% of the airline's annual fuel consumptions. True, today's airlines are increasingly frugal. They are now burning about 50% less fuel per passenger kilometer than they did in 1960. But those savings have been swamped by the continuing expansion of aviation, which has raised annual consumption of jet fuel to more than 250 million tons worldwide. To meet this demand largely with biojet fuels. Biojet fuel, we would have to go beyond organic wastes and top top oil rich seasonal corn, soybeans, repeated or perennial palm oil crops whose whose cultivation would require large areas and create environmental problems. Temperate climate oil crops have relatively low yields, with an average yield of 0.4 tons of budget per hectare of soybeans. The United States would need to put 155 million hectares, an area bigger than Texas, California, and Pennsylvania combined, or slightly larger than South Africa under the plow to supply its own jet fuel needs. That's four times the 31 million hectares that the country devoted to soybeans in 2019. Even the highest yielding option oil palm, which averages 4 tons of budget per hectare, would still require more than 60 million hectares of tropical forest to supply the world's aviation fuel. That would necessitate quadrupling the area devoted to palm oil cultivation, leading to the release of carbon accumulated in natural growth. But why take over huge tracts of land when you can derive biofuels from oil-rich algae? Intensive large-scale cultivation of algae would require relatively little space and would offer very high productivity. However, ex, ex, Exxon Mobil's experience shows how demanding it would be to scale up to tens of millions of tons of biojet every year. Exxon, working with Craig Venter's synthetic genomics began to to pursue this option in 2009, but by 2013, after spending more than $100 million, it concluded that the challenges were too great and decided to refocus on long-term basic research. As always, the task of energy substitutions would be made easier if we wasted less, by flying less. But forecasts are for further substantial growth of air traffic, particularly in Asia. Get used to the unmistakable smell of aviation kerosene. It will be here. It will be here for a long time to come, and moreover, it fuels the machines that, as we will see in the next chapter, are extraordinarily safe to fly.